Yes, the 83-year-old entertainer just announced that the upcoming 19th season of her show will be its last. Apparently
Ellen DeGeneres was once television royalty. A talk show queen with a trademark grin, a sparkling personality, and a mantra that echoed through living rooms across America. Be kind. For years, she danced across her stage, cracked jokes with celebrities, surprised everyday people with oversized checks, and cemented herself as the embodiment of joyful daytime television. She was warmth in human form, part best friend, part fairy godmother, part safe space in a chaotic world. But what happens when the image fractures? What do you do when the person who personified cheer and goodness turns out to be, behind the scenes, something else entirely? It started slowly, as these things often do. Whispers among staffers, allegations trickling out on social media. Then, a flood. Former employees and guests speaking about toxic energy, screaming matches, rules forbidding eye contact, emotional breakdowns, retaliation. It wasn't just one story. It was a chorus. The world that had once adored Ellen began to blink. The smile that used to feel like comfort started to feel forced. The "Be kind" slogan, once charming, started to sound ominous. It was the moment the curtain was pulled back, and behind it, the Queen of Nice was anything but. But Hollywood, as we know, has an uncanny way of insulating its darlings. Scandal may cause a temporary tremor, but with enough PR, enough carefully worded interviews, and enough curated apologies, even the most serious fallout can be softened. The outrage machine gets bored. The news cycle moves on. Except, this time, some people didn't move on. Megyn Kelly didn't. Greg Gutfeld didn't.
created a workplace more toxic than an Amazon warehouse in Chernobyl. Countless allegations surfaced last summer that the show's work...
They weren't content to let Ellen ride off into the sunset under the shield of celebrity amnesia. No, they brought out the floodlights and aimed them right at the center of the crumbling stage. Megyn Kelly entered the story with the calm precision of a prosecutor, not to inflame but to dissect. She had watched the narrative unfold, with the disbelief of someone who had long suspected something was off. Ellen's cancellation, as it was dubbed, wasn't about one mistake. It was about a system, a pattern, a cultural double standard. Megyn didn't simply attack Ellen, she attacked the silence that allowed it. She questioned how a person so universally admired could get away with so much for so long. Where were the journalists? Where were the watchdogs? Why had so many people looked the other way? In the world of television, image is everything. Ellen's brand was kindness. So long as she kept dancing and giving gifts, people accepted that brand at face value. Megyn saw through it. She reminded viewers that smiling on camera doesn't make you a good person. That being generous in public doesn't erase cruelty in private. That every time someone excused Ellen's behavior because she does so much good, it allowed the damage to continue. And then came Greg Gutfeld, less a surgeon than a demolition crew. Where Megyn brought facts, Greg brought fire. He wasn't subtle. He didn't want to be. He saw the absurdity in the situation and leaned into it.
The environment was rife with harassment and discrimination. Following those charges, Ellen's ratings dropped faster than Kevin Spacey's.
Ellen, he said, hadn't been canceled. She was simply facing consequences. You can't be on Netflix getting paid millions and claim victimhood. That's not cancellation, that's capitalism. To Greg, the whole thing was a dark comedy. A billionaire talk show host famous for dancing and dishing out hugs, now exposed as a tyrant backstage. The irony was irresistible. He imagined dystopian workplace scenarios where staffers passed post-it notes to avoid eye contact. A green room so tense it needed a bomb squad, not snacks. He didn't hold back, because to him, the real joke wasn't Ellen. It was the system that protected her. The audience who once adored Ellen was beginning to sour. It wasn't just the rumors. It was the way Ellen responded, or didn't. Her apologies were vague, laced with PR-approved language that never quite acknowledged the harm. "If I made anyone feel," became the refrain. Greg called it a hostage video. Megyn called it a missed opportunity for honesty. The world, increasingly, called it fake. And as Ellen's grip on her narrative weakened, the silence of her celebrity peers grew louder. Where once there were standing ovations and teary testimonials, now there was quiet. The Hollywood elite who had built her up had nothing to say. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps they were complicit. Or perhaps they just didn't care. Megyn didn't let that slide.
Show got canceled after she had this testy exchange with Dakota Johnson, where something happened where
She called out the hypocrisy. She pointed out that if Ellen were a conservative or less beloved by the media, she wouldn't be getting a redemption arc. She'd be getting lawsuits. The rules of public redemption, it seemed, weren't universal. They were curated, conditional, political. Greg, meanwhile, continued to roast. He joked that Ellen's brand had more layers than a wedding cake. That working on her show was like joining a yoga cult with mandatory crying sessions. But between the jokes was a darker truth. That power protects power, and even the cruelest behavior can be overlooked if it's wrapped in a smile and accompanied by a catchy theme song. And then, just as quickly as the fall began, it ended. The show was over. The lights dimmed. Ellen gave a final farewell that felt more like an obligation than a reckoning. No grand apology, no accountability, just a quiet goodbye, followed by a retreat into the comfort of Malibu mansions and millions of dollars in syndication rights. But Megyn and Greg weren't finished. They weren't interested in vengeance. They were interested in truth. Ellen's story, they argued, wasn't unique. She was a symbol of Hollywood's rot, of celebrity immunity, of the danger of mistaking branding for character. And as Ellen faded, they rose. Megyn, freed from corporate newsrooms, built her own empire, a podcast, a platform, a voice that didn't require permission. People flocked to it, hungry for a kind of truth they couldn't find on cable. She didn't dance, she didn't give away prizes, she gave clarity. Greg Gutfeld, meanwhile, became an unexpected king of late-night television.
Dakota said, oh, I had this birthday party, and Ellen said, well, why didn't you invite me? You didn't invite me. And she said, no, I did invite you, Ellen. That's not what happened. And Ellen had...
While the traditional hosts clung to political correctness and tired monologues, Greg turned his show into a strange, sharp, sarcastic roller coaster, and people loved it. They wanted honesty, even if it came wrapped in jokes. They wanted commentary that wasn't afraid to offend. And so, the story of Ellen DeGeneres ended not just with her show's cancellation, but with a cultural shift. A new media landscape that no longer accepts polished niceness as proof of goodness. A world where viewers demand more than a smile, where truth matters more than branding, where kindness isn't measured by what you say on camera, but how you treat the people when no one's watching. Ellen's empire didn't collapse in fire. It faded, quietly, under the weight of its own contradictions. And somewhere, in the echoes of a once cheerful set, the lessons linger, because in the end, what matters isn't the applause, it's what happens when the clapping stops.